Attention, you're listening to the Todd Huff Radio Show, America's home for conservative, not bitter talk radio. Be advised that the content of this program has been documented to prevent and even cure liberalism, and listening may cause you to lean to the right. Here's your conservative, but not bitter host, Todd Huff.
Well, that is right, my friends. I hope you had a wonderful 4th of July holiday. It is my pleasure to be here. We had a nice holiday ourselves, although tragedy has struck this great nation, and I want to talk about that. I want to talk about that today with what happened in Texas. In particular, what has happened to our culture, and this isn't new. This isn't new per se. This is just the way that it is. But it's very sad to me. It's very sad to me for the families. It's very sad to me for the rescue workers. It's very sad to me. You know, I don't know. Some people say I feel sorry for people who think this way, who come out and politicize everything in the blink of an eye. I don't know if that's how I feel or not. I don't know if I feel sorry for them. They're definitely wrong. There's definitely something that's really out of whack there. But I don't know if I want to say that I feel sorry for them. They're 100% in control of these sorts of things, how they choose to look at this. So I don't want to say that. Some people say that as kind of a condescending little, knock at somebody. I don't even care about that. They can think whatever they want, but it's despicable. It's absolutely reprehensible. It's just, it's ugly. It's terrible. And I want to talk about this a little bit today. That's where we're headed. I've got other things, of course, in the stack of stuff as well. It is a Monday. It is a Monday following a holiday weekend, so there probably is a little bit more than usual to get to, but my friends, we're going to start here, and we're going to work through this. Before we do that, though, my friends, let me mention something it's important to all of us. That's our money. We've worked hard for our money. You've worked hard for your money, but is your money working hard for what you believe in? Pause and think about that for a moment, because at 4-8 Financial, they specialize in what they call biblically responsible investing. That means they screen out companies that do not align with your faith and values, and they'll help you create a plan that fits your goals and your purpose. The best part is they'll show you how your current investments stack up against your values. It's easy to do. I did this. You can do it as well. Just visit 48financial.com/Todd. That's 48financial.com/Todd. And you can complete an analysis. You can answer some questions, and they will be able to show you how your current investments stack up against your values as informed and developed by the Word of God. 4-8 Financial, helping you align your money with your mission. All right. Let's talk about what happened over the weekend. So there was the remnants of a tropical storm that hit Mexico. And the remnants of the storm made their way to central Texas, and kind of stalled out. The National Weather Service knew that there was the likelihood of flash flooding. Now, what happens at a flash flood? I got to tell you, I've learned the more that I've aged and the more that I've seen certain weather phenomenon or whatever happen, or just things in nature, I've learned a lot. For example, I remember I never understood. I'll be honest with you. This was back in 2004, I guess, when the big tsunami hit a huge chunk of the world, candidly, in the Indian Ocean, I think parts of the South Pacific, an earthquake, Sumatra, and there were 250,000 people who died from this. Now, I knew that there were things called tidal waves and tsunamis, but I did not understand until I saw that just really what that meant. I think I understood it more as a giant wave, more than the displacement of just immense amounts of water. Because it's not just, it is, of course, the impact of the large wave at the beginning, but it's also all of the water that follows. We saw Japan get hit by something similar in 2011. The sheer power, the magnitude, the horrors, the destruction that comes from something like that. Where I live here in the United States, we have to deal with tornadoes. We've dealt with them our entire lives. When I was a little guy, I was very scared of tornadoes. In fact, I remember one almost hit our house. It went through. We lived on a 1-acre lot, if you will, and the tornado actually went through our property. So if you can imagine, a tornado on a 1-acre plot of land. The house is roughly, probably not quite, roughly in the middle. And the tornado went behind the house, between the neighbor's house and ours, and behind our house. We had, at the time, I was a little guy. It was in I was in second grade. I stayed home from school sick that day. It would have been 1986, I believe, spring of 86. Tornado went through the backyard. We had a swing set, actually a swing set with a slide that was pretty big. I used to climb up that thing and jump off of it. Something I wouldn't dare dream of today, but it ripped that swing set out of the ground, twisted it up. There was a pull-behind camper. We had a small camper. It flipped it over, and it did some damage. There's another little subdivision to the north and to the east, and it did some roof damage. It was not even by any stretch of the imagination a powerful tornado, probably an F0 if I'm being candid, but it went through the backyard. I remember the sound coming out of the drains. We took shelter in the bathroom. We didn't have a basement. I remember my mom, we had glass doors on the bathtub. I remember we were outside, the sky turned, I've never seen a pea green. It looked truly like peas, and she took us inside. She took the glass sliding doors off of the bath/shower. We took cover. It was only for a couple of minutes. You could hear the sound, the air pressure, I guess, coming through the drain. And then we walked outside to see, I don't want to say, just some damage that it clearly had done. And so there's different phenomenon that happen in different parts of the country. But there's, in Texas and in other parts, especially of the desert Southwest, are places that the ground is not really conducive to take on large amounts of water. In fact, there's like a bedrock. These are things that I've learned over time. We actually camped along the river that flooded was the Guadalupe River. On one of our trips, we stayed in a little town called Seguin, which is a little bit, east of San Antonio, maybe, 20 or 30 minutes from what I remember. Beautiful river, crystal clear waters, but the water was low. We were there probably February, maybe March. But we were on the other side of town, not the part that got hit with these, like Kerrville. We were in Seguin. But the ground is not, you can actually see when you're in that part of the country, I remember looking at them and just not really understanding. You would have these dry riverbeds where you could tell that water flows at least at some times. And what I didn't fully grasp was that these are there for when there are flash floods. Now, there are flash floods, and then there's catastrophic flash floods like happened over the weekend. I saw one radar that showed rain totals in one part of that particular area had gotten 18 inches of rain. There were several that had around 12 inches, but one said that they received 18 inches of rain over it was overnight. They were getting a couple of inches an hour. It was an incredible amount of rainfall. There's nowhere for the water to go. The ground is hard and rocky. It's a bedrock, so the ground can't absorb it. And so the places that are higher filter, this is an overly simplistic explanation, but the places that are higher, the water drains down creeks, drains to the larger waterways, often ultimately making their way to the river, and it's taking on all the water that came from one particular part of the area that funneled in, plus all the water that came from another part that funneled in, and it just funnels. All these funnels are coming in, and it raised the water. If I'm not mistaken, I think I heard 27 feet in under an hour. It's incomprehensible. Back in this area, which we have different geographical setup, different soil composition and all that than what they're dealing with down there. But there was a flash flood here back in 2008, not here, a little bit south of me, in Martinsville and Columbus, basically south following the White River. And there were subdivisions where within a short period of time, people walked out of their homes, their houses, their homes, and they were in chest-high water. So the way that it works, it isn't. The Weather Service can predict, but you can't predict that a storm's going to stop and spin and drop the magnitude of water that this one did. And so you have a scenario that's terrible. And then from that scenario, you have, in the case of these campers at this place called Camp Mystic, I believe, these young girls, this is terrible, terrible stuff. And my heart goes out to the families, to the churches, to the folks who were involved with sending kids here. The waters rose so quickly, and it was overnight. And it hit the camp. It hit the cabins. In fact, you've seen probably pictures of the mud and just the water damage from where it went through that camp, but they had to get out. A lot of them were washed away. Some folks being washed downstream. I've seen some 12, 15. I think I read one that was found 20 miles away from where he or she was. Some of these folks are campers. Some of these folks are just regular people that live in the area. But if you've seen the video, it's any of these videos, it's almost incomprehensible. A lot of folks have put a time lapse on the video, and it'll actually show the water rising with the time lapse. But if you pay attention to how many minutes have transpired during the time lapse, these aren't long time lapses. They've just sped it up so you can see the water rising. But again, in some cases, 20 feet, 27 feet, I think in one case, in under an hour. It's truly incomprehensible. It happens so quickly, especially, again, if it happens at a time when you're sleeping or not suspecting it. It can be devastating. Houses washing away, campers washing away, trees, just debris washing away, literally like along a wall of water down these waterways in South Texas, or excuse me, in central and South Texas. Just devastating, unbelievable damage and chaos, loss of life. This is terrible stuff. And so, but of course, the tendency here is to immediately politicize. Immediately. There's already people out there politicizing this. It happened, the day it happened, moments after it happened. In fact, there's some people who are saying some truly reprehensible stuff. I've got one screenshot. People have done a little bit of a deep dive here. Now, I don't know this. I know that this is actually a comment. It's been posted on social media. Here's one that says, "I thought their guns would save their lives. I guess guns don't float." Just sick, despicable, wicked stuff. There's another that people say is from a doctor in the area that says, basically, if you're a MAGA supporter, you deserve this, you voted for this, and if you're not, she hopes that you're well. This is unconscionable. This is wicked. This is evil, and I want to talk a little bit about this, my friends. Before I do that, let me take a bit of a pause here and remind you that we have to face it, and every dollar that we spend in this country is a vote for the type of America that we want to live in. For example, I just shared a comment or two from people, and some of these folks, if they own businesses, they're funding the sort of stuff that furthers this evil, wickedness, and divisiveness. This is why we launched Freedom Marketplace here. It's a free directory of businesses that align with your conservative values. Check it out. freedommarketplace.net is where you can go for that. freedommarketplace.net. All right. I want to get back to this. I want to talk specifically at just how people are politicizing this. This is redstate.com. As the toll rises in Texas, Democrats choose to be black-souled evil ghouls, written by Banshee here. The tragic news out of Texas continues to get worse as the death toll from a flash flood has risen to 51, including at least 15 children. Over 24 girls from a summer camp in the area remain unaccounted for, while the search and rescue effort continuing into the night. Sadly, the chances of finding more people alive diminished by the hour, and the situation is likely to become even more heartbreaking over the next few days. I did see examples of people being found. One woman was found in a tree. She had been driven, I think, 12 or 15 miles away from where she was when the floods hit. Some people have been found safely. Many, of course, have been recovered, having perished in this terrible situation. Having younger children myself, Banshee writes, I simply can't fathom what the impacted families are going through. I agree with that, by the way. That's kind of the basis of the starting point of where we are with this program today. My prayers are with them, Banshee writes, and I can continue to hope for more people to be found alive. Real quick word on that. And I don't know, he's written this in a way, I'm not sure what he means. Your prayers are with them. Listen, I've heard some people say, and he didn't say this, but, our prayers go out to the families, our thoughts and prayers, right? This is just what people say, which, again, is kind of what I want to get to today, because I'm going through, I've restarted my going through the Bible in a year thing, and it takes me a little bit longer because sometimes I just get behind. But I just finished the book of Job, and there's a lesson in the book of Job that I think is very appropriate for these sorts of these tragic, terrible circumstances. But your thoughts and prayers. Sometimes people say that because they don't know what to say. And I understand that. And I'm not saying Banshee does here, because Banshee legitimately may be praying for them. But you don't pray to them. The idea of prayer is that you intercede on behalf of someone else to the creator of the universe, to God himself, and you intercede through the blood of Christ to approach the throne of grace with confidence, and you ask, in this case, if it's intercessory prayer, you're stepping into that gap and you're pleading someone else's case, or you're basically pleading for provision and mercy and those sorts of things on behalf of the person you're speaking for. You're not praying to them. I don't know if even saying my prayers are with them. I suppose that's at least understandable to me. You're praying, and you're praying I think the right word would be for. But nonetheless, I just wanted to clear that up because some people just say our thoughts and prayers go out to the families. I think we'd be in a lot better shape as a nation. Again, far be it for me to say what God would or would not have done differently, if anything. I'm just saying if we're a nation that falls to our knees and prays without even needing to declare that to the rest of the people. It's one thing to tell someone privately, hey, you've been on my heart, I've been praying for you. That's one thing. Especially if it's sincere, if you're not looking for some sort of accolades or some sort of, wow, you're so great sort of thing. Because if that's the reason and motivation, again, I'm not implying it's the case here, but you've gotten your reward in full, my friends. If you were looking for the slap on the back and you got it, that's it. You don't get anything else on the other side of life in this world. But if you're doing it for the right reasons, then God honors and recognizes that. It doesn't always do what we ask and all of that, but to intercede for someone and on their behalf. My, oh my, would this country be a lot better place if we were a nation that sought to do that again. Bonchi says, I continue to hope for more people to be found alive. Amen, my friends. Certainly, this is not a time to try to take ghoulish political jabs based on what has occurred, and given the unpreventable nature of a flash flood, I'd argue there will never be a time for that. Isn't that the truth? Isn't that the truth? The world is so politicized today that even weather has become politicized. In fact, I get an email every week from the New York Times, and every time I get this, I roll my eyes in my head. And the title of it is, I kid you not, This Week in Climate. I may still have it. I may still have this. They send it, I think, maybe over the weekend. This Week in Climate. I think that's what it's called. I'm looking here. Yeah. Yesterday, I got it, New York Times. This Week in Climate. Climate Forward. The Sunday edition of the Climate Forward newsletter highlights some of our best climate reporting for the week and is open to all readers. Wow, it's just so motivating, my friends. Anyway, but the idea that climate is going to change, we have something different to report on climate this week over next, is preposterous to me. This is not the way that it works. It's certainly the way that it is reported, and it's the way that it's politicized, just like these comments that I'm about to read to you. Unfortunately, though, I have to take a break. I've reached the end of the first segment of the program, my friends. Sit tight, though. Take a quick time out. You're listening here to the home of conservative, not bitter talk. I'm your host, Todd Huff. We'll continue after the break, my friends. Be back in just a minute. Welcome back, my friends. Listen, program here, let me mention this really quickly. Program brought to you in part by our friends at Solti. You know that you've heard me talk about Solti for some time. Solti is an all-natural supplement that is designed to help lower your cholesterol. Science has spoken on this. Research has been conducted, and people who take Solti, it has been found, have seen their cholesterol lowered. Yours might have the same result or reaction or response, I guess is the right word. If you take Solti, I take it as well. You can go to their website, Solti.com, Soltea. Promo code Todd saves you 50% off your first order to get you free shipping as well. Solti.com, Soltea. Promo code Todd. You know, that's the format of this program. I give you content. I talk with you about what's happening out there. And then we have partners that we do what's called live mentions, which is just basically what I talked with you about. We try to find people with products or services that get you what you need. We try to find, hey, the listener of the program, this is who they are. This is the sorts of things that, might be something that would be a good product for them. And that's what we do. And we have these every day. And you'll notice I'm a little bit, I try to, they're moved around, and we've got some new ones coming and everything. But let me say this. On a day like today, when I'm talking about some heavy stuff, I don't even like, and this is no, listen, not a knock to the advertisers and sponsors, but I don't even feel comfortable talking about that because to me, we're talking about some heavy stuff here. It's just the format of the program. I can't change that. It's the way that you're able to listen to this program for free. I've got contractual obligations, and I also believe that these products and companies we talk about can help those of you in this audience. But it's still sometimes I don't even like talking about that, but yet you have people who are confident and immediately in a tragedy like this going directly to talking about politics when there's a tragedy like this. I mean, it is just unfathomable to me. So going back to the article here, redstate.com, it says, unfortunately, multiple Democrats have decided to eschew any empathy in pursuit of selfish partisan gain. Ron Filipowski, editor of the left-wing outlet Midas Touch, posted this on Saturday, the day after this tragedy hit in Texas. The people in Texas voted for government services controlled by Donald Trump and Greg Abbott. That is exactly what they are getting. Disgusting. But let me say this too for Ron Filipowski, par for the course. If you want an example, and there's plenty, but if you want an example of a knucklehead who normal people don't take seriously, who normal people would just roll their eyes. This guy is a flaming lunatic in every measurable, meaningful sense of the word. And he immediately makes us about politics. Listen, let me tell you, there could be things that government has to answer. I'm not predicting that it's the case, but a reasonable person says when you're talking about something that happened the day before, something as tragic and as overwhelming and folks, just because you know that flash floods are possible does not mean that you're prepared for a 27-foot increase in the volume of water in a particular area in a very short period of time. Those two things, for example, again, going back to what I talked about earlier, I live in a place where tornadoes are prevalent. There are times of the year where I see tornado watch on the TV. I mean, almost every day. It's not every year. Some years it's very rare, and then other years, literally, thunderstorm watch, thunderstorm warning, tornado watch, tornado warning is on the television. You hear the the alerts, the beeps on your phone and all that on a regular basis. It just depends on the season and the year and all that. And so they're out there. But it doesn't mean just because I get a tornado warning notice that it's, A, predictable where it's going to hit, B, the strength and scope of these things. I mean, folks, there's a range in the amount of power that tornadoes have, EF0 up to EF5. And those are dramatically different things. I mean, there are times when, honestly, when you're in this part of the country, and for those of you who are, you can relate to this, probably, you hear tornado warning, and you might go out to the front porch and look. Like a lot of people think, well, why aren't you ducking and I'm not, please don't misunderstand me. I'm just telling you what happens. I'm not encouraging you to disregard warnings. I'm simply saying that being warned of something and then being prepared for the scope of what it's about to, of the punch it brings is not the same thing. It's also, it's important to note when it happened, which again was at a time when a lot of people were still sleeping or whatever, overnight and early into the morning. But the Weather Service had been talking about this. He writes about this here. It takes a truly rotten soul to hand wave away the deaths of children as the deserved outcome of daring to vote for Donald Trump and Greg Abbott. Further, as I wrote in a prior piece, there is no evidence that budget cuts, this is right, by the way, that the National Weather Service played a role in the forecasting of this event. There was a 12-hour early flood watch in effect and a 3-hour early flash flood warning that was issued. So the warnings were there, but there's a desire. And listen, there might be something the government could do better or differently. Maybe there's not. I don't know. We all want to find a source to blame, an explanation for this. And I understand to a point. I understand someone thinking this. I don't understand what it takes or what causes someone to go out on these. And there's plenty of this, by the way. There are people who say Texas deserves it because they voted for Trump. This is unbelievable. Even if that's the case, which is remarkably a stupid comment to make. Even if that is the case, what about the percentage of people who voted Democrat? By the way, these are children. These children didn't vote for anybody. What the world? These idiots. They talk about Trump supporters as having this evil, in their soul or whatever. Folks, this is the poster child for it. Saying that these children deserve to die because this state voted for Trump and Abbott. You don't even know what the world you're talking about. I remember when the tornadoes hit Kentucky a couple of, maybe back in May, I'm guessing. There were reports that this was right after DOJ cuts. Oh, yes, DOJ cuts, they said, prevented the people from getting warning, except for that wasn't what happened. It just factually wasn't accurate. They said that the National Weather Service was not going to man some stations 24/7, but I remember reading the article to you. It said, they knew this storm system was coming in and they had people stay overnight to report on it. I mean, this is no kidding, right? I mean, you can tell the system's coming. There are stretches where the weather's calm and nice overnight. You can predict this in the day. Hey, there's nothing to watch overnight. We'll see you in the morning. You can see, oh, wow, there's a system moving in that's produced tornadoes. It's got the recipes for bad things to happen with the weather, so let's go ahead and stay overnight. I mean, they act like that's not a possibility. These idiots. It's not even idiot. It's a condition of the heart is what it is. And I want to talk about this a little bit. It's reminded me, I mentioned off the top, and this is what today's Todd Talk was about. If you want to check that out, that's on our website, toddhuffshow.com. Just go to the Todd Talk. But I'm going to talk about that next segment. I'm going to talk about the story in the book of Job. Because his friends, I want to give you the summary. It's going to have to come after this segment into the next segment. But his friends, he had 4 friends that came and visited him. Job was a man in the very long ago. In fact, on the biblical timeline, many people believe it falls somewhere in the earlier chapters of Genesis, so very, very early times. But Job suffered great loss, the loss of his wealth, the loss of his health, the loss of his children. And it was through tragedy. It was through windstorm, I think, went through and knocked a building down where his children were. That's how some of them passed. So it was tragic natural disasters. He had boils on his body. He lost his wealth. And he had to deal with these people, just like we have to deal with these people that Job's friends were much less idiotic than some of these clowns today, but yet they told him some things that were really not good. So I got to take a break, though, my friends. Sit tight. We'll talk about that on the other side of the break. Back here in just a minute. Welcome back, my friends. So, I want to mention briefly, program brought to you in part by Red, White, and Brand, which is a new division here at the Todd Huff Show. We help companies put their logo on almost anything. This can be apparel, this can be hats, this can be trade show displays, anything from as simple as a backdrop and a pop-up banner, a table covering, all the way to some really sophisticated trade show booths, promotional products, you name it, my friends. If you want your logo on it, we can almost certainly help you with that. Red, White, and Brand, your logo on almost anything. redwhiteandbrand.com. That is the website. Promo code Todd's going to save you 10% on your first order there. And if you order online, you're going to get free shipping as well. redwhiteandbrand.com. Promo code Todd. All right. I had mentioned that I just finished going through the Bible with this study called the Bible Recap. So you read the story of the Bible chronologically, as best as people can put these plans into chronological order. And you go through and read the Bible. And so, you start with Genesis, you read through Genesis 12, and then you read the book of Job, and then you come back and pick up at Genesis 13 or wherever it breaks. But I just finished the book of Job, because I'm now on my second time through this, and I'm at the beginning. And Job went through some tragedy. Now, we have insight. If you read the book of Job, you'll see that God makes it clear that Job was not directly responsible for the bad things that happened to him. So Job suffered for things he was not directly responsible for. Now, in the one sense, we all sin, so we've all broken our relationship with God. But none of Job's actions directly led to the judgment or to none of them were the cause of what he suffered. And he suffered, again, the loss of his wealth, the loss of his health, and the loss of his children. And so Job was mourning. I mean, Job lost everything in the blink of an eye, and he lost it without cause. In fact, if you read the book of Job, you'll find something happening that's really tough to even wrap our heads around and explain, but effectively, the accuser, Satan, stands before God, and he says, look, you got this guy down there on earth named Job. Of course Job likes you. You give Job everything he wants. If you don't do those things for Job, he's not going to show you the same affection, the same respect. And God basically gave Satan a certain amount of authority to effectively test Job. And that's the starting point of the story. Now, Job didn't know this. Job's friends didn't know this. We have an insight into the story from the narration that the folks involved were not privy to. And so Job is suffering, and he's lost everything, and he has 3 friends. Either one of them joins later. There's a total of 4. We don't know if the 4th one was just silent longer, if the 4th one came along longer or later in the story or whatever, but there's 4 friends. And they sit. This is the beginning of Job, and they gave him a lot of bad advice. They blamed Job for basically everything. And they thought Job was being hard-headed. So they didn't do that very well, but they did do the beginning quite well, because the story communicates that they sat with Job in silence for a week. They sat with him in silence. They didn't come in and immediately start to tell him how he was wrong. They just mourned with him. And I think that there's a lesson here. There's obviously the Word of God, lots of lessons all over the place. But there's a lesson right here for us in the here and now. And when there's tragedy, the first thing that should happen is that empathetic, reasonable, decent human beings should simply show empathy and to just sit, metaphorically in some sense, because this is a big country. We all aren't there. But if you're there, you sit. You don't provide anything. You don't give these answers that sometimes make me cringe. Saying things like, well, this was God's plan or whatever. Sometimes bad things happen. And it's just comes from living on a broken planet. And it's terrible. And there's no words that can suffice. No amount of blaming or trying. I understand if there is good reason to believe that something should have been done differently by the government, whether it's the local government, the state government, the federal government, whatever. Maybe there was something different that should have been done by someone else. We don't know. But just to come in and to blame people that voted for Trump for the literal deaths of people. See, they've been saying this for so long, they almost need this to be the case. It's sick to say, but they almost need it to be the case to be right in their minds, to be justified in the things that they've been saying about Trump. But the place to start is to sit in silence. You know what? Maybe even genuinely pray for their loss and to just let them cope and mourn and deal with it without making it about politics in the first 30 seconds. It's a disgusting thing, and I've got to go. SDG.